and thank you for checking in to the Neutral Zone Hotel, an unapologetically left-leaning podcast exploring hockey at its best and worst. My name is SJ, my pronouns are they, them, and I am so pleased to welcome you to the Neutral Zone Hotel. Here to ensure your stay is a memorable one are a few of my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Alex, she and her, and I'm a fan of in the extremely unusual position of being happy to not win the draft lottery, Pittsburgh Penguins.
What's that like? I wouldn't know. My name's Trevor. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a hometown Vancouver Canucks fan who's never won a draft lottery, famously. But I'm also very grateful to the Ottawa Senators. Why, one might ask? Very simple. We're going to go back to a trade in 2019 where the Senators get Anders Nielsen and Darren Archibald from the Canucks for goaltender Mike McKenna, Tom Pyatt, and a 6th-round draft pick that year. And who did they select with that 6th-round pick? One Artur Shilovs. Thanks, Ottawa.
Yay! We at the Neutral Zone Hotel love our Latvian goalies.
Yeah, we do.
I think we've got a fun show today. We're going to start by talking about the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. The regular season has wrapped, and the playoffs, well, by the time you hear this, the playoffs will have begun. They will be playing for the privilege of lifting the Walter Cup. It is a 4-team tournament. They are playing best of 5 rounds. So 2 rounds, best of 5. Toronto will play Minnesota. And Montreal will play Boston. What are your thoughts?
Montreal and Boston is a perfect rivalry. And if Boston somehow manages to win that, and then Toronto wins that, it sets up nicely for the Toronto women's team to be like, hey, men's team, watch how it's done.
Yeah.
True enough. I mean, I believe the PHF Toronto team also won.
Yes.
Recently.
They won the last of the Isabel Cups in overtime, no less. I think they might have actually beaten the Boston Pride in that game. It was either them or the Buffalo Buttes, but I do remember watching that when they streamed it on Twitch. So,
yep.
But yeah, no, very exciting. Very good regular season for our first foray into the league. I thought a lot of the games were good. I'd wager about 80% of the games, or at least some of 80% of the games. So I think I did really good with keeping up this year. We'll see how that goes next time. But yeah, no, I quite enjoyed it. And hopefully the playoffs will be just as good. Personally, I will be rooting for Montreal because how can you not root for the GOAT? And me being Canadian, have to cheer for a Canadian team. And no, we're not cheering for Toronto unless we have to.
So I'm pretty excited for the playoffs. I'm excited that they're doing best of 5 series. I do think that Toronto is going to beat Minnesota pretty handily, but this is a very close league. Minnesota's been on a bit of a skid, though. They could turn it around and do an upset, which would be very, very exciting. I think my big disappointment, of course, in the regular season was Ottawa falling out of the playoffs. I'm not sure they won a single game after World Championships. They nosedived. Minnesota did the same thing, and they almost lost their playoff spot. They ended up getting in as the 4th seed, only because Ottawa could not win a single game either. But Boston had a very impressive end to their season. They seized the opportunity, seized their own destiny, and they got in. So I personally don't think I'll be cheering for any individual teams. I'll try to catch at least all the games, and if I don't catch them live, I am planning on rewatching every single PWHL game from season 1 sometime this summer. So that'll be a nice project for me. And it should be pretty fast too, because the PWHL is putting up condensed game archives on YouTube, and that's going to really, really help. So if you are a women's hockey fan, there's plenty of women's hockey to come, and I hope that it is a great playoffs. I really, really think it will be.
Oh yeah,
a great time.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those. So it's to allude to those condensed games. It's basically like just over an hour or so. It's puck drop right to the end. And instead of commercial breaks between the whistles, it basically skips right back to action. The only time that there's really the delays is, of course, between the whistles and during goals and whatnot. But it's a really easy way to just catch up on something you might have missed. And it's something that they only started doing about a month or two ago. I'm very grateful they have. Speaking of YouTube...
Right. Okay, so team, we are now available on YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. So if that is a way that you like to consume your podcasts, you can now do that. If you just want to support the show, though, we would love it if you went to the Neutral Zone Hotel YouTube channel, went to some of the videos, liked the videos, subscribe, leave comments. Because it does help us feed the algorithm. We are trying to grow our listenership, so that's a big reason we're on YouTube right now. You can also follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel, all one word. Those social media feeds are now active again. Please follow them. Please boost, repost, retweet, whatever the verb is on the platform of your choice. The posts that would really help us find new listeners and connect with new listeners. We'd also love it if you joined our Discord. Just go to neutralzonehotel.com/Discord and it'll redirect you and open up the Discord. We'd love to hang out. So we are all on there. We talk all the time. I know I'm a constant presence on our Discord. If you want to talk to me, I'm there. And if you like this episode, please rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon, on Google, whatever the platform choice is. We would really appreciate it. Spotify, if you went ahead and rated it. Ratings really do help the visibility of the show on those platforms. So thank you so much for doing that. Let's do a little quick break, and then we're going to get into the NHL. Okay, so we are only hours from, I think it was about an hour ago, the NHL draft lottery occurred. The results are in, and as always is the case, everyone is unhappy. In this case, I think maybe personally a little less so than normal. The order matches, for the first time since 2010, the order matched the pre-draft lottery order exactly. So there was, in fact, no movement. The Sharks won the first pick. The Blackhawks won the second pick. Anaheim stays at third. Columbus stays at fourth. My beloved Seattle Kraken stay at eighth. So, not a ton to talk about there. I don't know. What do you all think?
I mean, Alex, you're the one who potentially has the most news that would come out of it, or this draft lottery.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in the unlikely event the Penguins won, their draft pick would move up into the top 10. That's not something the Penguins really wanted, because the Penguins are trading one of either this year's or next year's draft picks to the San Jose Sharks as part of the Carlson trade. And when you look at the Penguins, and when you look at what those draft classes are, you probably want it to be next year's over this year's. And since they are picking outside the top 10, they're not trading it. They are trading it, so they're keeping next year's. And it's a weird situation to be in, to be rooting for your team not to win the lottery, because most of the time there's no cost to it. It's something that is better than the alternative for your team, but it's the weird situation where the Penguins weren't. As for everyone being unhappy, I mean, sure, specific fan bases can be kind of sad that their team didn't win, but the worst case scenario didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
The worst
I
case
think
scenario.
I think honestly, the most part, a lot of fans are relatively fine for the case that Alex is alluding to, and that's that Chicago didn't win.
Well, they stayed at second.
Yeah,
anyway.
Still not first.
People really didn't want Chicago to have another first round pick. It's not a stretch to see them move up and take it, because, well, Chicago hasn't really suffered for its crimes. I mean that literally. And so it feels bad to see them rewarded. And yeah, them picking number 2 is still fine, but they were also the second worst team in the league last year. So, yeah, but we didn't want to see them win. They didn't win. The Sharks won. It's the first lottery win in their history for them. It's a good chance to restart. They're almost certainly going to be taking Macklin Celebrini, which can't really go wrong with taking a consensus first overall. A fun thing with, at the very least, Macklin and Celebrini going to the Sharks is that earlier today, Emily Kaplan at ESPN published an article, kind of a profile of Celebrini from the perspective of some of the colleagues of his father. His father is the sports performance coach for the Golden State Warriors. So there are worse things, both as a market and as a player, to have the guy that's coming in to be the star have pretty strong connections with a different team in the market. It's about as good as you can ask for if you're the San Jose Sharks. There's a lot of.
I think Celebrini was also a junior Shark.
Oh,
his family's been there a long time, even though he is Canadian.
He's bounced as elite hockey players do. He's bounced around a bit. He's went to the same hockey prep school that Sidney Crosby did. He did his USHL games with the Chicago Steel. But I definitely makes sense that he would have played in a Sharks umbrella organization at some point in time, just because that's who would be doing hockey in that area.
And of course, something that we all like to say a lot in this podcast, the best thing for him, all of his stuff is there.
Well, I think all of this stuff might be in Massachusetts right now, but he's young. He can move. Yeah, I think this is, I don't mind this result at all. It's fine. He can be in San Jose. San Jose is truly awful.
Hey.
They're truly bad, and they're gonna be bad.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about the Sharks and not the city, and I was about to get very defensive.
I'm gonna be honest, I've never been to the city. The Sharks are truly bad. They're going to be bad for the next several years. I cannot get too upset about them getting a first overall pick, even though they are in the Pacific Division. Yeah, so I'm sure San Jose itself is a very nice city. I've never been. All right, cool. Let's talk about all of the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs so far, and a few other things that have come up, coaching hires and the like. So this is going to be kind of a long NHL discussion. I wanted to start with the Ottawa Senators, who we've just learned that they have now hired Travis Green as head coach on a 4-year contract. So Jacques Martin was just kind of holding down the seat after DJ Smith got fired mid-season. So now Travis, after what I've heard was an, quote, exhaustive coaching search, and also they probably got turned around by Craig Berube for not paying him enough. They've landed on Travis Green. Should I read Benjamin's prepared statement on it or first?
Yeah, I think so. Benjamin, being the closest to the team, I think would have the best perspective on it. So let's lead off with him.
Yeah, I think Benjamin might be a closet Sens fan. So here's what Benjamin asked us to read on the air for him. I'm open to the idea that Green might be a better coach than his record suggests. That's a fair thing to say, especially with how bad that roster was in Vancouver.
Oh boy, was it.
It's also fair to say that Ottawa's fan base deserves a proven winner as a coach. That, after years and years of DJ Smith, who has proven decisively he is not NHL head coach material, interim pre-lockout guys like Martin and Crawford, the mastermind of the Toronto Maple Leafs 2024 playoff power play, Guy Boucher, and a bunch of guys that, despite seemingly good records no other organization would take a head coach gamble on, Cameron, McLean, and Clouston, the city of Ottawa deserves having their billionaire owner spend a bit of money and hire a proven winner. This is a city that hasn't had the right head coach since Jacques Martin 1.0. Can't we get someone who we know will move the needle, rather than someone for whom all the beat writers need to manufacture consent in order for the populace to accept? Reactions.
Well, first things first, right off the bat, listening to all those coaches' names, I'm reminded of a segment we did a few months ago. Nice little shout out to there. As someone who has lived through the Travis Green experience over several years, he's fine. I think the main reason I think they hired him is Travis Green likes to try and coach a style that focuses on a defensive structure and lots of structure and kind of going from there, which is something that from what the limited amount I've seen, Ottawa lacks. They're a little more freewheeling, kind of run and gun here and there. And a lot of their issues lie within their defense and their goaltending. A lot of the talent is up front. They just maybe need a little bit in the back end. But I'm not saying Travis Green's good at it. And if his audition as the interim head coach in New Jersey is anything to go off of, he hasn't learned to be better.
Well, he was the interim head coach in New Jersey for about 5 seconds, although I was a little concerned by the fact that he didn't keep that job.
Yeah. Which makes me then think if New Jersey already had someone in mind for that. But I mean, it's Green's got another chance at a Canadian market. The other weird thing too is the contract length. As we discussed just last week, coaches don't last very long. 3 years seems to be about the going rate if you're lucky. So for him to get 4 years, I hope Michael Andlauer is willing to pay out for a second or even third coach in a couple of years from now.
Coaching salaries are one thing where if you are a team that has the financial resources to do so, because there's no cap, there's no competitive balance cap there, you can spend as much as you want. You're limited in the slots that you have, but you can spend as much as you want on those coaching slots. Where in Ottawa, and this is something Benjamin didn't really mention in his statement, but has mentioned elsewhere, Ottawa was one of those teams that just wasn't paying their guys. The fact that this is a 4-year contract, the fact that they're maybe able to take that extra year, be willing to commit to paying a guy the extra year, maybe means that Andauer is a bit more willing to spend on the coaching. It's going to be hard to be less willing to spend on the coaching than the previous ownership. But it's definitely something it's definitely like the difference between what a team like Toronto can do with their coaching contracts and their buyouts and firings and of the various coaches and how long those stay on the books versus what a team like the Senators could do, where they were trying to run things on a shoestring as much as possible. And part of me wonders is, like, I don't think this is the best guy. Like, he's not a very inspiring rehash. But I don't know. Sometimes guys deserve these second chances, especially if they weren't set up to succeed. I just don't think this one will be all that successful.
For the sake of the Ottawa Senators, who are just such a tragic failure of a team, I really hope that it does work out for them. I think they have a lot of great potential on that team. So I'm crossing my fingers for you, Sens. I hope it works.
Mm-hmm.
Let's touch on Drew Bannister. He was the interim head coach of the St. Louis Blues for much of this year after Craig Berube was fired. And he has now been officially hired as the head coach by the St. Louis Blues. So he's no longer an interim. He got the big job. This was interesting to me because I know that they fired Berube, who is, as far as I can tell, a coach very much in demand now that he is cut loose. They fired him because the Blues stank and they weren't on track to make the playoffs. And then Bannister really took the reins, and the Blues did not make the playoffs. They actually came only a few points short. Although it is worth noting that if they had been an East team, they would have made it. I don't know.
No,
what do you think?
I think that summarized it perfectly. Perfectly fine, perfectly capable. We'll see if it gets better. I don't expect it to do so.
All right. I just feel like the problem with the Blues was never the coaching, though. I think it's the roster. And if the Blues come out and pull off the exact same record next year as this year, I will not be surprised. They need to make real changes there, or they're just going to be stuck as the 17th or 18th team in the league, which is honestly the worst place to be.
Mm-hmm. Especially, too, in a division like the Central, where your high end is so high that you're basically hoping for a wild card at best. Maybe third if Winnipeg has a downturn. But as long as Dallas and Colorado... Well, and Colorado's going to be good at least for the next 5, maybe even 10 years. Dallas is still going to have probably another 3 to 5 near the top before their younger guys start getting a bit older, their older guys start petering out.
Man, I think Dallas is going to be good for a really long time. They have done an incredible job transitioning their core. So, like, Ben and Sagan coming, and Ben and Sagan coming off the books is going to give them so much flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
That's like $20 million back right there. And those players are not worth their contracts anymore, but they're still able to compete. And their young guys coming up, like Stankoven and Bork, look like they're going to be absolutely incredible for them. And they have real, what looks like really good goaltending for the future in Jake Ottinger, as long as he can stay healthy. So, yeah, that's a rough one.
Back to Bannister for a bit. I want to double check to make sure of this. Since we just talked about it with Green, it's worth bringing up here as a point in comparison. It's a 2-year contract.
Okay, much more manageable then
for this one.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So it's especially since Bannister is an interim guy. He is a first-time head coach. And you're still trying to feel out what you've got with him. It's a 2-year contract. It's not as major a commitment. Which, like, and if it works out, it works out well. If it doesn't work out, it's easier to move on. I agree with SJ that it's much more likely to be a roster construction issue than a coaching issue. But we shall see.
If it's a roster issue, then you just really have to hope that they don't end up being like 2000s to 2010s Calgary Flames and consistently try and push for a playoff spot, but never a good playoff spot. So at best, you're picking like 14th every year. At some point, you're just going to have to hope that they just pull the shootout and just free fall. Or maybe pull it out of the hat. Who knows?
All right. Do we want to move on to teams who made the playoffs and are no longer in them?
Yes, I do. Let's talk about the Kings first. So the Kings were eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers in a pretty resounding victory. What did the Kings win? 1 game?
Yep.
Was it 1?
It was 1.
1 game. So Oilers in 5. This is the 3rd year in a row that the Kings have been eliminated in the first round by the Oilers, and it has actually gotten worse each year. In the first year, they did it in 7. In the second year, they did it in 6, and this year they did it in 5. So the Kings have made negative progress, which is absolutely brutal because some of their younger players are actually many of them are in the lineup. Some of their best prospects they've actually traded away. Guys like Brock Faber got traded to Minnesota for Kevin Fiala. They made a big trade last summer for Pierre-Luc Dubois, although I don't think Velarde and Arvidsson were actually a huge thing to give up in that trade, but they are saddled with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was terrible this year. He put up 40 points. He has a huge contract extension, like over $8 million. I didn't actually look up the exact number for the next 7 years. And he was pretty invisible in those 5 games of the playoffs. So that is a real problem for them. I was really hoping that the Kings would... Okay, that's a lie. I don't like the Kings, and I don't want good things to happen for them. So I'm actually thrilled that they are keeping Rob Blake around, and they're not buying out PLD, and they're going to make no changes, and they're going to lose to the Oilers again next year. Perfect result.
Would it then be fair to say that the Los Angeles Kings are the West Coast answer to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well,
no,
maybe,
because they won more recently than...
the Kings... No. The Kings do have rather impressive blown series leads to combat the Leafs, but the overall record of utility does not match up. Leafs still take it.
Yep. And the Kings won in 2012 and 2014, so
Yeah, and they haven't won a round since.
So, a couple of points that I want to kind of counter. One thing I kind of think is that the Kings performing worse against the Oilers is as much about the Oilers slowly but surely improving their roster construction around their best players versus, or it's as reflective as much of that as it is the Kings not getting better. The other thing is that it's and you brought it up, but it's insane that buying out Pierre-Luc Dubois is even an option or an option worth considering. And I think it's worthwhile to point out why, which is that he, despite how much he has moved around, is still a very young player. And if the Stanley Cup Finals ends fast for the Stanley Cup Finals, he will be young enough that if he gets bought out, it will be at a 1/3 rate instead of the usual 2/3 rate, which makes it a lot more manageable of a long-term commitment. It's still an insanely like a 20-year you're paying out this
yeah, it would be a 14. It would be 14.
You're paying out this
It's like
contract, but
PWHL
it's
all over again.
just you've got it's like $1.5 million cap hit per year, which is something you can easily work around.
Unfortunately, Rob Blake says that they're not going to do it.
And I think if
even though it would be so fun,
I think if Rob Blake is sticking around, which if you're the Kings, you probably shouldn't do it, but I see why you are doing it. If Rob Blake is sticking around, you're not pressing undo on that. Just because Pierre-Luc Dubois is still a second overall pick, he's still theoretically a good player who can fulfill that slot, but also I'm not sure there's a higher profile bad vibes player in the league right now, just in terms of the echoes that have been left behind in each of the teams that he was on. Like, the Blue Jackets as a franchise have not had good vibes recently, but the trade with the Jets that sent Dubois there was definitely an upgrade in vibes for them. If we're just echoing post haste, the Jets this year, it was definitely an upgrade in vibes, in like enjoyment coming from the locker room. And there's lots of other reasons that the Jets locker room was rancid last year. But he's just a bad vibes player. It's the tweet where no one ever questions if the baby just has bad vibes, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is that baby with bad vibes.
It does seem to be the case that he is not well liked by his team members. At least that is what I have heard. So yeah, I'm not sure. There's that, and then there's I'm not sure there's another player who has gotten this much benefit of the doubt from his team's management while producing so little and being so disliked. It's actually astonishing how much rope Dubois has gotten. He's only 20. He's not even 26 yet. He will turn 26 next month. And just a really remarkable, joyless hockey player. And I don't know if you guys probably didn't watch that interview, his exit interview. He has no answers. He just was like, I gotta have a good summer. I gotta train.
There's something to be said for Los Angeles was where he wanted to go. Pierre-Luc Dubois was always a player who, from the moment he was drafted into Columbus, was trying to force his way to a bigger market. Usually because he's French Canadian, it was Montreal, the one that was talked about. He finally got his wish. He got to go to a big market in the Los Angeles Kings, a competitive playoff team. And the Kings had a fair amount of success this season, at least in terms of the regular season, and he didn't really contribute it despite being the piece that was brought in to take them to the next level. The center that can shore up their center depth in the present, in the future, to account for when Anze Kopitar finally starts to retire, to account for all of these older players aging out. And they got that from him this season. They got 40 points, which is not something you want to see. It's why people are looking at buyout as even an option versus just gritting through it and hoping it gets better, because it was that much of a disaster. And it's fairly easy to rebound from a terrible season. But if that's the floor, man.
That's a low floor. Yeah. He's really got nowhere to go but up.
I would imagine that maybe this is management's excuse, but going into a new team with a new system and then immediately having that system disrupted by firing your coach midway through and bringing in a new coach, I wonder if some of their logic is, well, we'll give him, like, once we can get a new structure and we can get him kind of acclimated to it, get something consistent, and then maybe he'll get the results from there. Like, do I think
that would normally be a good point, but they didn't change anything.
Oh, I know.
They promoted an assistant, Jim Hiller, and he played the exact same systems. And they didn't change one dang thing in that organization.
You know that. And I know that. And everyone listening knows that. But do you think Kings management wants to give off that impression that they know that? No. They got to play dumb. They got to come up with the excuses. I will say, in terms of the Los Angeles Kings, if you go back to our very first episode, the haikus, I bleeping nailed it.
What was your haiku?
I don't remember fully verbatim, but it was, there are not many teams that have had a better rebuild still out in round one.
Oh,
man,
swish. Every so often I'm like, we need to just completely... Where did the haiku doc go now?
I don't remember. All I know is that's going to be an off-season thing where we're going to go, once the Stanley Cup is awarded, we'll probably go back and go through them all. I just know that I'm at least one for whatever.
I love it. Out in round one.
Do we want to go to the other team that, for the life of them, can't seem to make it past round one, except for last year?
That sounds like a transition into our Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
What do you mean our Toronto Maple Leafs? No. You can have them. Get them away from me. No, thank you.
I'm just saying that they're our Toronto Maple Leafs in that we all enjoy laughing together at the Toronto Maple Leafs every single year.
Do we?
Well, I mean, I enjoy that. I think that the Toronto, hockey, professional hockey is an entertainment product. And I think as an entertainment product, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they nail it. They're not nailing making their own fans happy. They're not nailing winning championships. But as far as bringing joy to every other fan base in the league, they got that shit on.
All right, so let's take a look at the series in a vacuum. The Leafs lost in 7 in the first round. In this series, they played a team that had insanely locked-on goaltending in Jeremy Swayman, who, once he took over the net, was incredible. They were missing their best player for what at this point of time I can only assume was a witch's hex.
Are we? Wait a minute. Are we talking about Nylander? Or
I'm
Matthews?
talking about Matthews.
Matthews.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it sounds like Witch's Hex is not far off. He definitely got wicked sick after game 2. And then when he said I think it was in game 3, or I don't remember which one it was, he said he got injured.
Well, I mean, they were playing in Massachusetts, so the Witch's Hex does line up.
So if you're just kind of looking at that, you are missing your best player for most of the series. It was still a competitive series, and the other team had very good goaltending, at least for the back half of the series, including several games in which, or a couple games in which you won. You look at it and you say, yeah, okay, that's fine, that's understandable. But this is a Leafs-Bruins series, and it did not happen in a vacuum. It happened on a decade or so of history and trauma and the same story happening over and over again. And at the time of this recording, nothing new has happened. We're still waiting on the ownership meetings of the Toronto Maple Leafs to get some idea of what they're going to go. It's the ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs is kind of a mess in terms of all of the parties invested in Maple Leaf sports entertainment are kind of not getting along with each other.
And MLSE also has a new president this year.
Yes. So there's that. But they've had Shanahan, they've had Keefe talk to the media, they haven't taken immediate action when kind of a lot of people were really wanting that to happen and really thought that should happen.
Yeah, I know people were expecting Keefe to get fired the day after they were eliminated,
Yes.
And that hasn't occurred.
And I think we'll have more to say once we have an idea of what the Leafs are actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, well, from the reports, Keith Pelly, the new president and CEO of MLSE, is going to have a press conference this Friday alongside president of the team, Brendan Shanahan, and general manager, Brad Treliving. And can I just share with the class what my ideal dream scenario for that press conference would be?
Since a lot of people are going to listen to this episode after it has already happened, absolutely yes.
Perfect. I just want them to kind of introduce themselves, just be like, all right, so this is what we think went wrong, so on and so forth. Just, explain themselves, apologize. Brendan Shanahan starts talking about how they're going to be better. They're going to kind of retool, talk about all these fixes in the middle of about a 5-10 minute speech. And then Keith Pelly just halfway through says, hey, Brendan, you're fired. Get going. You're out of here. Mid press conference, just boot him. Perfect theater. Perfect way to make a statement.
Load him into a cannon on the stage.
Oh, yeah. It'd be perfect theater. It'd be perfect entertainment. And be a perfect way to make a statement that things are going to change in Toronto. Do it for the Toronto fans because they're going to want to do it. Do it for the rest of us because, as SJ said, the Toronto Maple Leafs are prime entertainment for every other fan base. Make it happen. I
mean, literally that is not going to happen, but I applaud your imagination.
The other thing to note, and just in terms of concrete nuggets we have, and by concrete nuggets, I mean things tweeted by Elliot Friedman, where he tweeted that if the Maple Leafs do end up making a move with Shanahan, that there would not be another president of hockey operations, that they would just leave that position non-existent and have Treliving directly report to the president of MLSE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, been there before. To bring out my Vancouver hometown bias, when Trevor Linden got fired, and ownership being like, all right, we're just going to directly chat with Jim Benning because that's a great idea.
Plenty of non-dysfunctional teams are capable of operating without a president of hockey operations. That's because that extra layer can be really helpful, especially when it comes to ownership groups like the Canucks. You are seeing teams move towards it instead of away from it, but it's possible. And I do think there is a real difference between a corporate group like MLSE, who has a corporate head, and a guy like however you say the name of the Canucks owner.
Aquilini. Aquilini.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that Mitch, if you're listening, Seattle would love to have you.
Yeah.
I cannot guarantee that you will be treated with any kind of godhood, however.
God, I heard that comment about how they feel like they're treated like gods, and all I could think was, thank goodness I'm an atheist.
I do think Marner is the tier of player that if he's available, you should try to get, which is why I'm lukewarm on the Leafs moving on from him, unless you really, really think you have to.
Yeah, they say there are guys that get you there, and there are guys that get you through. Right now, the Kraken and many other teams in the league, they just need to get there. And Mitch Marner is a guy that will help you get there. So, I think there's some really good landing spots in the league. Whether he decides to take that opportunity to carve out his own niche somewhere else, that is a tough decision that he is going to have to make for himself this summer.
There are 3 things that I think Mitch Marner needs. Number 1 is a nice warm hug, because the poor guy feels like he's been through a lot.
Okay.
Most of it, maybe rightfully so. Number 2, someone needs to take his phone away from him, because he is way too in tune about things that are said about him. And number 3, find him a nice new home away from everything else. Maybe a nice therapist, because he needs to get out of Toronto for his own mental health. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think his dad also needs to stop meddling in his career.
That's why I said take away his phone. Just Mitch, just turn it off, put it under your pillow, turn it on silent. Just tune it all out.
Couple more teams I wanted to talk about. Let's pop back to the Western Conference. We talked a little bit about the Jets earlier. The Jets were eliminated in, what was it, 5?
Mm-hmm.
5 games by the Colorado Avalanche. And head coach Rick Bowness has announced his retirement. I just want to read a couple of stats. Bowness has finished his coaching career with 2,726 games, the most in NHL history. He has worked in the NHL in 5 different decades. Bowness was originally drafted by the Atlanta Flames. The Atlanta Flames in 1975. He's 69 years old.
Nice.
Very true.
Sorry, go on.
His family went through some health stuff this year. He had to take leave twice. I think it makes total sense for him to step away. And I also don't think there at the end he was a very good coach. So wish him the best. Mm-hmm. Jets need a new coach now, though.
I think there are 2 things that summarize Bowness's coaching career so well. What was that? You said he coached how many games again, and what was the stat associated with it?
He coached 2,726 games as an NHL head or assistant coach, the most by anyone in league history.
And how much did he win?
I actually did not look it up.
Well, I don't even mean in terms of like actual wins. How much success did he have in terms of Stanley Cups and such?
I don't think he got a single one.
That says it all right there.
Okay, look. All right, I'm looking it up here. He has one loss in conference finals. He has one loss in Stanley Cup finals.
I know exactly
for Dallas against TBL. So that was the bubble run.
Yeah.
And then he's gotten and those were his two most successful years. So the bubble run with Dallas was certainly his most successful season.
Didn't he? Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't he come in as an interim halfway through that season?
I don't know. That was before I actually started watching.
Yeah.
Hockey. Alex, do you know?
Not off the top of my head. A couple of things, at least with late career Bowness. Definitely his time with the Stars was marred with kind of a poor development environment, pretty uninspiring offensive structure, particularly late in games, and like all the most stereotypical attributes that you attribute to a NHL coach, and particularly the derogatory ones. With that said, he did what he needed to do in Winnipeg, which was help kind of right the ship. And by right the ship, I mean repair whatever went wrong in the locker room.
He stripped Blake Wheeler of his captaincy, and that was a very ballsy thing to do, and it was the right move. And I gotta give him that.
Sorry, if I may quickly, I did look it up. Rick Bowness was indeed the interim head coach of the Stars that season, replacing Jim Montgomery.
Oh yeah, but that was certainly a special circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, sorry, Alex. Continue.
One thing, some of our Winnipeg Jets acquaintances kind of said on his exiting press conference or his statements leading up to that was, it sure seems like he was setting up to retire with a mission accomplished, with the mission being righting the ship within the Winnipeg locker room. And I think he has done that. I think he's done a decent job with it, with the obvious caveat that I am about as outsider can be to that specific situation, but the vibes seem better, and that's
yeah. The vibes were certainly good enough to get Connor Hellebuck to re-sign, and that's not a small thing, even if Hellebuck wasn't particularly good in the playoffs this year. So the last team I wanted to address is the Vegas Golden Knights. Are eliminated by the Dallas Stars in 7 games. I wrote here on the sheet, good riddance.
Amen.
For now.
By God, that's Vegas's music.
What do people think of the Vegas Golden Knights this year?
Rest in piss won't be missed.
Okay, what do you think, Alex?
Someone had to lose that series. And the team that was worse this year, based off of their record, based off of the amount of points that they have, was that team. So much got said about Vegas and their cap and their roster construction and cap evading tendencies, but they ended up going head to head against a very good team, which is the risk you run when you are fourth in your division, and they lost. And at a certain point, that's that.
To further the point about their roster construction, you can say all you want about their penchants for wanting to use LTIR to their advantage. But in a way, it was almost a disadvantage because really they didn't have players healthy enough to play until the playoffs. And at that point, you're trying to cobble together, Mark Stone trying to play with Tomas Hertl for the first time in the middle of the playoffs, amongst other things. You've got basically a roster that had never played fully together until the playoffs. And you can try and ride that out all you want, but at some point, the lack of chemistry is going to bite you. And especially when you play a team that's as good and as deep as Dallas is. Vegas, it doesn't surprise me that they brought it to 7, but the right team won this series.
Yeah, I agree. I think injuries just absolutely killed them. And even though it was injuries that allowed them to really load up at the deadline, it may not have been worth it. I don't think Mark Stone was ever really fully healthy. And a healthy Mark Stone is a hell of a player. So yeah. Also, I'm not sure, like, their blue line, they really cobbled it together at the end. Hannafin was great for them. I'm not sure Theodore was ever really healthy either. Martinez was, like, healthy scratch territory. He's so cooked. Alec Martinez is ultra cooked. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do over the summer. But I really do think that Hertl was their big add for next year's roster. And they'll probably let Stevenson walk. He's such an upgrade over Stevenson. But,
do you think they also let
Marsh?
They probably let Marchessault walk too, as well, right?
I mean, it depends upon whether Marchessault is willing to take a pretty steep discount to stay. If he wants to get paid, there are absolutely teams out there that are going to be willing to do it. But that's the decision that every comfortable star has to make. Like Reinhart has to make that decision this summer, for example. There might be somebody else that I'm blanking on. Yeah, I don't think the UFA. Oh, Stamkos also has to make that decision. We're gonna see, and I don't think it's such a personal choice. I don't know what is going to happen.
You mentioned Stamkos, and just to wrap this up, I wanted to do quick hits on each of the other 4 teams that were eliminated. We'll start with the Lightning, who went out in what was kind of just a wet fart of a performance. Panthers. I'm not sure about their future. It's each year and year they've grown more locked into their roster construction, and that roster has looked shaky. And there's a decision on both fronts with Stamkos this season. They can make it work, but do they actually want to? Staying in the East, Capitals were swept. Good job on winning the hopefully roster that were bright spots this year continue to be bright spots. Hopefully Charlie Lindgren can keep it up and this isn't a one-year thing if you're the Caps. Islanders. Lou extended. Woohoo!
Wait, did they really extend Lou?
Just
man, I feel like he is going to die
over
in that chair.
I know Benjamin half jokes about it all the time, but it's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, no. And the last one,
it will. It's gonna be weird.
And the last one is the Nashville Predators, who lost 4-2 to the Canucks. Good season. Great team in the Canucks. You got the Predators, some young guys have stepped up. Some old guys have had career seasons. And hopefully Andrew Brunette can lead you guys to more success. It definitely looks like you've got the chance to stick around for a bit.
Yeah, I think Burnett did a great job this year. I think the Preds have rebounded. And although I do think that Canucks Preds series was a bit of a slog and not fun to watch.
Yeah.
As a neutral fan.
No, 100%. Even as a fan of one of those teams, it was a rough watch a lot of the time. I will grant that 100%.
With the Canucks goalie problems, it suddenly became a benefit to not have action for them. And they were able to define the terms of the series pretty well. Because they were the better team. Oh, hold on. I do have one more thing. The last thing, I don't think it's really anything. I just want to take a moment to finally celebrate that the bad man for me personally is now gone. Todd Reardon has been fired by Kyle Dubas. For those of you who don't know who he is the former Capitals head coach and current architect, or now I guess former architect of the Penguins power play. The single biggest reason that they did not make the playoffs in either of the past 2 seasons. It's interesting because Kyle Dubas announced this firing directly. Especially since the scuttlebutt was that Mike Sullivan really, really did not want to make staff changes. I don't think that means anything. I think this was because Reardon's record was terrible. But it's fun to speculate about. Is there a crack? Will stuff happen? Who knows? Certainly not me.
All I know is I am very happy that your sworn enemy has been slain. Respect to you, Alex. Congratulations.
Yep. Congratulations on the firing of Todd Reardon. Better luck for your next power play coach. 100%. All right. You've been listening to Neutral Zone Hotel. Neutral Zone Hotel is written, posted, and produced by the Neutral Zone Hotel crew. That's us. Find out more at neutralzonehotel.com. Big thanks to Emily Mowbray for designing our fabulous logo. You can follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel, all one word. We're also now on YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. You can join our Discord at neutralzonehotel.com/Discord if you want to hang out with us. And if you like this episode, please rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. It really does help people find the show. Thank you for listening.
Bye.